Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a stack of research on the table today that I think is going to strike a massive nerve for a lot of people. It certainly did for me. I mean, I actually had to put the notes down and just walk around the room for a minute because I felt so personally attacked.
It's one of those topics, isn't it?
Yeah.
It explains a frustration we've all felt, but we probably never had the precise language to describe it.
Exactly.
It cuts deep because it challenges how we see our own intelligence.
Yeah, it really does. We're talking about that specific, really annoying gap between feeling like you've learned something, feeling smart, capable, totally on top of it,
Yeah.
and then realizing usually at the absolute worst moment that you actually know nothing.
The classic Monday morning amnesia.
Yes, it's the Sunday night confidence versus the Monday morning blank stare. You read the business book, you watched the tutorial, you were nodding along, you felt like a genius, and then someone asks you one simple question, and the whole thing just evaporates.
It is the universal experience of the learner. It's that gap between the sensation of competence and the reality of performance.
Right.
And what we're diving into today isn't just why do we forget, it's deeper. It's about why we thought we knew it in the first place.
So it's about self-deception.
It is. The source material we're breaking down today basically argues that your brain is actively tricking you.
Okay.
We aren't looking at study hacks or flashcard apps. We're looking at a kind of a cognitive breakdown of why we fool ourselves.
And the mission for this deep dive, then, is to really dismantle a very specific belief. The belief that if learning feels easy, it's working.
Yes.
Because I think that's the default setting for most of us, right? If I'm struggling, I'm failing. If I'm cruising, I'm learning.
And that's the core conflict.
Yes.
I think we're all sort of wired to believe that ease and familiarity are signs of learning, but all of the research suggests that comfort is actually the ultimate deceiver.
Let's start right there with the illusion of competence. Because, intuitively, that doesn't make sense. If I'm reading a report and it feels smooth, if I'm not struggling, I assume that means I'm processing it well.
Of course.
I assume smooth equals smart. Why is that wrong?
Well, that's the trap. Think about the last time you read a really well-written book. You're highlighting sentences, you're nodding, you're thinking, yes, exactly, that makes total sense.
I do this constantly. I'll highlight a whole paragraph and feel incredibly productive. I'll look at the page and think, look at all this knowledge I just absorbed.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. What are you actually doing in that moment? You aren't doing any of the heavy lifting.
What do you mean?
You're tracking with the author's logic. The author did the work. They organized the thoughts, they picked the words, they built the structure. You're just walking down a path they already paved.
So I'm confusing following the path with building the road.
Precisely. You are confusing the clarity of the material with the capability of your own mind. And this is where we get into the first big concept from the sources. Fluency.
Fluency. Okay, so in normal conversation, that just means speaking a language well. But here, it's a specific brain thing, right?
Right. In cognitive science, fluency, or processing fluency, refers to the ease with which information moves through your mind.
Okay, so just how smoothly you can read it or hear it.
Exactly. When you read something and the font is clear, the words are familiar, the logic flows, your brain processes it quickly. It takes very little metabolic energy.
It feels frictionless.
Yes, and your brain loves that. It takes that lack of friction and it interprets it as a signal. It says, oh, this is easy to process, therefore I must have mastered this content.
So the brain's using a shortcut. It's basically saying low effort equals high knowledge.
Exactly. It's a heuristic,
Yeah.
a mental rule of thumb. And, in other parts of life, that rule usually works. Think about driving.
Sure. If I'm driving well, it feels effortless. I'm not thinking about the pedals. If I'm struggling and sweating every time I merge, I'm probably a bad driver.
Right. Or conversation. If you're fluent in a language, you don't have to think about the grammar. So we are conditioned to believe that mastery feels like flow.
That it feels easy.
But when we are acquiring new information, that signal is a lie. That's the distinction.
It's deeply misleading.
It is. Because when you're just reading or listening, that flow you feel isn't coming from your mastery. It's coming from the recognition of the material.
The source used a specific term for this dynamic that I thought was so helpful. They called it the trap of fluency. Can we unpack how that actually plays out? I say I'm studying for a certification at work.
Okay, perfect. Let's play it out. You watch a tutorial video. The instructor's clear. The graphics are great. You understand every single step they take. You finish the video and you think,
Got it. I know how to do that now. I feel good. I might even skip the practice exercises because clearly I get it. I saw him click the button.
Exactly. Then, 2 days later, you open the software yourself. The screen is blank, and suddenly you have no idea where to click.
And the panic sets in. That specific, wait, what? Feeling.
That panic is the collapse of fluency. When you were watching the video, your brain was just recognizing the steps. Oh, I recognize that button. I recognize that menu. But recognizing is passive. You were letting the video drive.
The source used an analogy here that I really want to highlight because it just landed perfectly for me. The passenger seat effect.
It's the perfect comparison.
It's the difference between driving a car and sitting in the passenger seat watching a good driver.
Think about the sensory difference. When you're the passenger, the ride feels smooth. You see the driver brake, you see them turn, it all makes sense. You aren't confused, you know where you are.
Right, you think, yeah, I could do this, this looks easy. You're just vibing, you might be on your phone, you aren't feeling the feedback from the steering wheel.
The experience of knowing, being the driver, and the experience of being guided, being the passenger, they feel almost identical in terms of understanding.
Until you are put in the driver's seat.
Until the driver gets out and tosses you the keys.
And that's the moment of truth. You realize you don't know how hard to press the brake. You don't know when to start the turn.
And that brings us to the great divide. If there is one thing you need to take away from this, it's the distinction between recognition and possession.
Let's drill down on this, because I think we use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
I recognize that. Feels a lot like I know that.
But they are fundamentally different cognitive states. Recognition depends on external cues. It requires a trigger.
So the book is open, the speaker is talking.
Yes. The environment is doing part of the thinking for you. It's providing the context.
So the answer is kind of floating in the room with me. I just have to point to it.
You're just connecting dots that are already visible. Possession, by contrast, is the ability to generate the idea internally from scratch without any visible cues.
So the ability to reconstruct the concept when the book is closed and the room is silent.
That's it.
The invisibility problem is what makes this so dangerous, though. The source mentions that while the cues are present, the mind cannot distinguish between the two states.
That's the really scary part. While you are looking at the textbook, your brain literally cannot tell the difference between, I understand this because I own it, and I understand this because the answer is right there.
The feeling is the same. It's just a feeling of yes.
Identical. That obviousness you feel, of course X leads to Y. That obviousness belongs to the context, not your brain.
It's like context is an invisible crutch. You think you're walking on your own, but you're actually leaning on the wall the whole time.
And because effort feels costly biologically, your brain hates expending energy. If it can lean, it will. And it will tell you, good job, we're walking, look at us go.
So we're all walking around with this false sense of security. And then the source introduces this unifying mental model to explain what happens when we step away from the wall. They call it the scaffolding analogy.
This is such a great visual. I want everyone listening to imagine your knowledge on a topic. Say, your knowledge of a project at work as a building under construction.
Okay, got the building in my mind.
Now, when you're learning or reviewing notes or listening to a podcast like this one, you are surrounded by external supports. The teacher, the notes, the prompts.
Those are the scaffolding, the braces holding everything up, the steel supports on the outside.
Right. And as long as those braces are up, the building looks tall. It looks solid. It has the shape of a building.
If I look at it from the street, it looks like it's done.
Exactly. And the mistake we make, the illusion, is looking at that standing building surrounded by scaffolding and assuming the internal beams are solid. We confuse the support structure for the building itself.
And then comes the meeting or the test.
The scaffolding is removed, the external cues disappear, and if the internal framework is sparse, if those internal beams aren't connected,
the whole thing comes down.
Immediate collapse.
And this explains why that moment feels so shocking. I've had this happen. I walk into a presentation, totally confident, and then I freeze. And it feels like a sudden failure, like an earthquake just hit.
It feels sudden, but the source makes a very important distinction here. And this is crucial for anyone who beats themselves up over this. It's not that you forgot.
It feels like forgetting. I usually say, oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
It feels like it, but you didn't lose the knowledge. The building didn't fall down because of an earthquake. It fell down because it was never built to stand independently in the first place.
Wow. Okay. That's harsh, but it's also really helpful. It's not a memory failure. It's a construction failure.
You recognize the scaffolding. You didn't possess the building. You were admiring the braces and thought you were admiring the architecture.
Okay, so if we want to stop fooling ourselves, we need to understand what's physically happening in the brain. The source dives into the neuroscience here, contrasting impressions with structure.
Yeah, this is fascinating because it debunks the idea of the brain as just a recording device. We tend to think of memory like a hard drive.
Or a photocopier. I read the page, take a snapshot, file it away.
But the brain doesn't work like that. It doesn't store static copies. The brain builds what are called reconstructive pathways.
Reconstructive pathways. Break that down for us.
It means that when you know something, you aren't retracing a stored object. You are activating a network of relationships that allows you to rebuild the idea from scratch.
So it's active. It's a process, not a thing you just go and grab.
It's completely active. Think of it like cooking. You don't have a frozen meal called the answer in your brain's freezer. You have a pantry full of ingredients. Knowing is the ability to walk into that pantry and cook the meal fresh right now.
That sounds way more exhausting than a frozen meal.
It is. It requires work. And that brings us to the difference between impressions and structure.
Impressions are what we get from just reading.
Yes. Impressions are temporary traces of exposure. They create that warm, fuzzy feeling of, I've seen this before. That's like recognizing the picture on the frozen meal box.
But there's no food inside.
Exactly. You can describe the box, but you can't feed anyone. Structure, on the other hand, is the organized set of relationships, the neural connections that allow for that reconstruction. It's knowing the recipe.
And this brings us to a really counterintuitive point the source makes, which I think is the hardest pill to swallow. Difficulty is actually good.
Yes. Desirable difficulty, as the psychologists call it. This is hard for us to accept because, like we said, we love fluency. We want it to be easy.
We want the montage scene from the movie where the guy reads the book in 30 seconds and suddenly knows Kung Fu.
But that's not how biology works. Remember, recognition is passive. You sit back. Reconstruction is active. You have to go into your mental storehouse, struggle to find the pieces, and put them together.
And that struggle, that strain you feel when you're trying to remember a name and it's right on the tip of your tongue.
That strain is the learning. That is the feeling of the pathway being paved. It's the feeling of neurons connecting. If you aren't feeling that strain, you probably aren't building structure.
That completely reframes the frustration. Because when I feel that strain, my first thought is, I'm dumb or I'm bad at this. I stop and go look up the answer because the feeling is so uncomfortable.
Which leads us directly into the emotional side of this. The source lays out this predictable emotional pattern that I think is a trap for almost everyone.
Let's walk through the cycle. Phase 1.
Phase 1 is during exposure. This is when you're watching the video or reading the book. The cues are everywhere. Premature confidence sets in.
Everything is clear. I'm nodding along. I feel smart. I'm thinking, I'm going to crush this.
Then comes phase 2. During independence. You step away. The cues are gone. You try to explain the idea to a colleague. And suddenly, reconstruction falters.
The blank page. The blinking cursor.
And how do we interpret that moment? We interpret it as a character flaw. We think, I felt so confident yesterday. I must be broken. My memory is shot.
We take it personally. We think we've lost something we had.
We do. We internalize it. But the source says this interpretation is dead wrong.
So what's the reality?
The reality is that it is not a moral or intellectual failing. It's a structural reality. The learning signal, the proof of knowledge, was just delayed. You felt successful too early, and you felt incompetent too late.
We feel successful too early and incompetent too late. That is a really powerful way to put it. So the struggle isn't proof that I'm failing. It's just the first time I'm getting accurate data.
Exactly. It is strictly diagnostic. It's like a stress test on a bridge. If the bridge cracks, you don't say the bridge is stupid. You say, oh, we need more steel right there.
But because it feels like failure, most of us don't add more steel. We run away.
The avoidance trap. This is the tragedy of the learner. We encounter that struggle, and it hurts our ego. So what do? We retreat back to the source.
We go back and reread the chapter, rewatch the video.
We go back to the scaffolding. Because looking at the scaffolding makes us feel smart again. It restores the illusion of fluency. Oh, right, I knew this.
It's a safety blanket. Okay, phew, I didn't forget. It's right here.
It is. We reinforce the illusion because it feels better than the reality of reconstruction. We're addicted to the feeling of the braces.
And that prevents the building from ever being finished. We get stuck in this loop of review, feel good, attempt, fail, review.
Correct. As long as you run back to the source every time you struggle, you are denying your brain the chance to build the path.
So, okay.
Oh.
If we want to break this cycle, what do? The source gives us a solution, and it starts with a new definition of learning.
The definition is this. Learning is what remains when nothing is holding you up.
I want that on a poster. Learning is what remains when nothing is holding you up.
It changes the metric entirely. You have to change how you view that struggle to recall. When you close the book and you stumble, that is not a judgment. It is data.
It's the structural engineer pointing at the blueprint.
Exactly. It tells you the internal beams aren't connected here yet. And that is so valuable. It's not failure, it's a map.
So the actionable insight here, and this is the part people aren't going to like, is that we have to voluntarily remove the braces.
You must. To truly know if you've learned, you have to attempt to explain, apply, or reconstruct the idea without any leaning on the original context.
No glancing at the notes.
No glancing. No, let me just check the first sentence to get me started. That little glance is the scaffold. You have to sit in the discomfort of the blank page.
That silence is painful when you're just sitting there.
It is. But you have to try to force your brain to bridge that gap. If you can't recall it, wait. Struggle with it for a moment. Try to find another path to the information.
And if you really can't do it, if the screen stays blank,
then you haven't learned it yet. And that's okay. It just means you need to do the work of reconstruction, not the work of recognition. You need to identify specifically what is missing, go get that piece, and then, this is crucial, try to place it again without looking.
It's the struggle that solidifies the beam.
Precisely. Stability emerges through use, not mere contact. You have to use the information, retrieve it, manipulate it. That is what tells the brain, hey, this is important. Build a permanent road here.
This has been, honestly, a little bit of a wake-up call for me. I think about how much content I consume. I feel very informed. But if you asked me to explain the core arguments of the last 3 articles I read,
you might find yourself reaching for the scaffolding.
I definitely would. I'd be looking for my phone. It's a shift from being a consumer of information to being an architect of your own mind.
It takes more effort. It's slower. You can't speed learn this way. But it's the only way to build something that stands up when the pressure's on.
So to recap where we've been, we started with the illusion, the comfort of clarity. We think ease equals learning, but that's just the passenger seat effect.
We moved to the reality of reconstruction. We saw that the brain builds pathways, not files. And we realized that feeling of knowing usually comes from the environment, not from us.
And we learned that the feeling of failure, that moment when you can't remember, isn't a sign that you're broken. It's just the scaffolding coming down and revealing the building isn't finished. It's an invitation to do the work.
And that is the most important takeaway. Real learning is quiet. It doesn't announce itself with a rush of excitement while you're watching a video. It reveals itself when you're alone in a quiet room and you can still hold the idea together in your mind without help.
It's what sticks when the noise stops.
Correct.
I want to leave everyone with a thought to mull over. We've talked about how confidence and ease can be liars, so take a look at the things you think you know right now. Your professional skills, your favorite topics. How much of that is actual independent structure you've built? And how much is just your ability to recognize the right answer when it's staring you in the face?
It's a scary question, but it's the only one that matters.
Check your scaffolding, everyone. We'll see you in the next deep dive.